Good morning, everyone. How's it going, Hayden?
Good to be here.
Good. There is a lot of attention on crypto in the year of our Lord 2025. The public markets are pumping, and everyone's now realizing that centralized companies like Coinbase, Robinhood are going to be able to create and extract a lot of value from a lot of the innovation that we've made on the on-chain side of the world, which I think just really adds even more emphasis as to why the on-chain mechanisms that we have need to be so incredibly powerful to be competitive with the convenience of Coinbase and the convenience of Robinhood and all of these things. So, Hayden, I think the way I'll position Uniswap, starting with Uniswap V1 and V2, which are pretty like primitive versions of exchanges, but still 0 to 1 breakthroughs in what it means to be an on-chain exchange, on-chain DEX. And now we've gone all the way to Uniswap V4 and also Unichain. I want to kind of like position that as the on-chain world just growing in strength, growing in powers that are competitive with all the same old like market infrastructure that we see in TradFi. And so how would you in this day and age kind of position Uniswap when we are looking at a lot of centralized companies gaining a lot of power in the TradFi world?
Yeah, so the first version of Uniswap, it wasn't about creating the most efficient exchange in the world. It wasn't about creating the largest exchange in the world. Obviously, it's done pretty well. It recently crossed 3 trillion in trading, but it was about creating something that was decentralized and something that offered properties that don't exist in existing structures. And so, the core idea is you have something like FTX, right, where they had a huge amount of customer funds on their balance sheet, and then it turns out that the funds were not being used the way they said. And I think the core value proposition of something like Uniswap is that how you can prove it, not just with company audits, the way that it works in TradFi, but you can prove it with cryptography and with math. And so Uniswap exists to provide something that is safer, that is more provable than existing systems. And I think that the earliest versions they were very primitive, but they still got early adoption because they offered something differentiated. A very good example is that centralized exchanges back in 2017, they had really onerous listing processes. They charged a ton of money for any asset that wanted to be listed, and people didn't want to pay that. And so when Uniswap came out, it provided a way for people to self-serve, create the market themselves. And, just opening, and I think a lot of the early, there's early, like the smartest people I knew in the beginning, were basically all said that Uniswap would never work. And it was because it wasn't that efficient. But it turns out it doesn't need to be that efficient if it offers something that's differentiated, and opens up the market to new people and lowers the barrier to creating an asset. And then, since then, right, each version of Uniswap has gotten increasingly sophisticated, increasingly efficient, offering, better prices, more flexibility in how people create these markets. And that brings us through to today with Uniswap V4 and Unichain, which are just, all about that continued progression. Uniswap V4 opens up the market structure to many new different types of, configurations, essentially, that can be optimized for specific use cases. It turns out, when we were building Uniswap V3, right, we were constantly making trade-offs between, this benefits one thing, this benefits another thing. Which do we choose, right? And I think that the answer with Uniswap V4 is actually let's let the market participants decide how they want to provide liquidity. And so we opened up this whole world of innovation. And then, when it comes to things like Unichain, it's all just about continuing to progress the Ethereum scaling space, and do so in a way that is really well optimized and uses all the knowledge we've built. Right? I think something that differentiates us in the crypto space is that we build very full stack. So a lot of crypto projects tend to pick like a very narrow sliver of the tech stack and say, this is what we're building. We're building a data layer. We're building an execution layer. We're building a smart contract. Right? And I think that we've found that what we're trying to build is the world's largest decentralized exchange, and that actually involves innovation at every layer of the tech stack. Mm-hmm. And so, with Unichain, part of what we're doing is we're taking all the pain points that we've experienced building on other chains. We're pouring them all into a single chain that we're focused on, and we hope that the innovations we bring there are brought back to the other places. Mm-hmm. And that includes basically very low block times. People who trade, they care about things happening quickly, and it's good for liquidity providers, it's good for traders, and then we're bringing better decentralization guarantees because we think that's an incredibly important aspect of the space and part of it differentiates it. And so these are the types of things that we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I'm going to keep on positioning Uniswap against things like Coinbase, like Robinhood, because I think like if ultimately Coinbase, Robinhood, centralized companies come to embody all the properties that crypto has, then it feels like we built all of the valuable things, but then they were able to monetize it. And so like one thing that I want to like lean into is exactly what you just finished off with is Uniswap is building full stack stuff. You guys are building layer 1 exchanges, layer 1 applications, building a layer 2 to be a little bit more expressive with what you can do, the data layer, all of the things. So you can integrate them into a better product. And that's kind of fitting with what we have seen success in crypto look like over the last, I think like 18 months is people realize there has been a trend shift away from chains and towards applications, towards like products, which is finally good for crypto. Finally, like users are preferring products and no chain can really launch without having a very sophisticated product being built on it in a first party way or some sort of product that the market doesn't have elsewhere. So this is what I see Unichain doing is you guys are using your full stack expertise. You are building out a product suite that is not just a product suite in the same sense that like Coinbase, again, Robinhood has these product suites, but it's also a platform at the same time. It's a platform for other product suites. So maybe you can like juxtapose the nature of the Unichain, Uniswap product suite with what we would be able to find in TradFi and how you guys are building this to just be market competitive.
Yeah, so a lot of different places to take that, but I will say that there definitely is like an interplay between Uniswap v4 and Unichain and our app suite, right? Things that they're sort of like these fundamental benefits. I think like a really simple example is that the way that we order blocks on Unichain allows us to dramatically reduce the amount of value that traders lose to things like MEV. And MEV as is obviously the way that people extract value from traders based on how the blocks are ordered. Mm-hmm. And I think that when it comes to things like I think for a very long time, the way that we continued to grow crypto was just offering something that was differentiated, right? I mentioned that before. But to really take on, bigger financial systems and to win, not just millions of users, which is where we are today, but tens to hundreds of millions of users to billions of users eventually, we have to offer things that are not just like different, but they also have to feel better to people. They have to feel better to users than existing products, mm-hmm. Right? Because not every user, like we've been in this fortunate world where there's a lot of early adopters who care about the technology, who care about the unique nature of it. And I think that like ultimately we have to build products that are cheaper and faster and easier to use even than TradFi products. And I think that is entirely possible. But it sort of requires like, almost like what we do is we basically like systematically look at everything that feels like is holding us back and we try to solve it. Which is, maybe a novel idea, but like, and so sometimes that means developing a blockchain. Sometimes that means building a wallet. Sometimes it means just creating a standard for how wallets connect to web apps to connect to blockchains, right? And so, and then when it comes to like, TradFi, I think people sometimes think of it as this monolith. Mm-hmm. But what you actually have is a lot of different parties with a lot of different incentives and a lot of different problems. I think a good example of this is, a lot of what DeFi does is kind of cuts out middlemen, right? And it sort of, the most obvious one is that it allows you to create an exchange, it allows you to trade assets, without having, without even needing to have like a major, huge market making firm, mm-hmm. because people can self-serve, create liquidity. But then you also have, and when you think about everyone, I think that probably like almost the best market participants to go after is, asset issuers. People that create ETFs, people that create assets, everyone that sits between them and a person that buys those assets is not like people don't love having 1,000 middlemen between them and their customers. They might have to because of the market structure that they live in. And so I think that a unique value prop that we could offer to a TradFi, to a TradFi player, if they're an asset issuer, would be like, hey, like we can cut out, the 1,000 companies that take fees on the people that ultimately buy your products, and ultimately lower cost for you and for your users. And so I think that like sometimes people view DeFi as like purely in competition with TradFi. And I would imagine I would say it's like more in competition with like the more a market participant is like a necessary middleman, the more it's in conflict with it, and the more it's like a sort of a fundamental value creator or asset creator. Actually, the more of an opportunity there is. And so it's about like finding what can we do that helps these people. And I'll just also add like when you can kind of like think about like the biggest opportunities for crypto is things like like credit card fees, 3%. That's insane, right? We can, if DeFi is successful, we will have removed the 3% credit card fee and replaced it with a very, very, very low blockchain, transaction. And, you'll remove the $25 wire fee. Like these are the types of things, these are like the opportunities, and users would love to, all else being equal, users would love to, pay lower fees, I'd say.
I've got an idea that I want you to check me on because I don't know how grounded in reality it is, but it's an idea that I've been tumbling around in my head. And there's this, all blockchains have MEV. Some blockchains have more sophisticated MEV supply chains that just leak less value for their users, and some blockchains are still kind of more primitive in their supply chain of MEV extraction. Unichain with TEEs. I'm pretty sure is on the frontier of the most sophisticated MEV minimization mechanisms that we have on the market today. And at the same time, we have TradFi looking at all of these different chains, looking at them as vendors, being like, where do I want to deploy my assets? Where does BlackRock want to deploy the Biddle Fund? Where does Franklin Templeton want to deploy their tokens? Or where does, some off-chain centralized institution want to do their business? And there are very strict, we don't call it MEV in TradFi, but like MEV laws in TradFi, no sandwich attacks, no sandwiching, all this sort of things. And so my thought is that all of the investment that Unichain has made into hyper optimized order execution, where TradFi, when they make a trade, they retain as many bips as possible, it's going to be an attractive place for them to actually land their orders and do execution. Where on other blockchains where it's a little bit more of a Wild West, there's very high slippage and very just unbridled MEV. There's a notion of lack of compliance on those chains simply because the MEV infrastructure isn't there. Is that something that you think about when you build out the Unichain infrastructure? And are you also talking to, ask the issuers, deployers, or traders about what it would be like to get TradFi onto Unichain?
Yeah, I think the way that I would put it, I like mostly agree with what you're saying. I think, but the way I would frame it and the way that we got there is not like, we should do this because it's more legal in a TradFi context. It's like because it's better for users. And I think that there's
a correlation between what's better for users and what's legal.
Yeah, for sure there is. But the way that we got there is more the latter. And it's just worth noting because, obviously, because like I think that one thing that has happened that I think is like, because a lot of the projects are not built with like end user applications in mind. Like when we're designing, Unichain, we're thinking about Uniswap, the application, and Uniswap and the users in our product. And so it informs our decisions. And so we're thinking from their perspective, and that leads to kind of those same outcomes, right? Mm-hmm. It leads to like, people don't want people, extracting value from their trading. Right. People want to have like kind of strong guarantees about the platform they're using and that it's sort of acting in their best interest. And so, a lot of what we're doing is, but it does have the indirect benefit of, I do think that makes it's not just attractive to retail users or users of our app. It is also attractive, I think, to larger players as well. If this is a new internet, imagine if like, you could imagine almost like in an internet context, like what MEV is. Like, imagine you had like AWS trying to like play poker games against an internet poker website, and like the AWS operators are like inserting themselves, like it would be crazy, right? And so like, I think that like MEV is not a good business model I think it's a good thing I don't think that like if the business model is extracting MEV, I don't think that's like a very good business model in the long run, because I don't think that's attractive to market participants. So I think that like our goal is but it is like a fundamental property. And I will say it exists in TradFi too, right? Like, a thing that we talk about, actually, one thing I can do here is tie some of the recent innovations in MEV to like a TradFi problem, which is, one of the biggest problems with like the 9 to 5 trading hours or whatever it is, the discontinuous trading hours of TradFi. Why do people have it? They have it because they want to go home because their system isn't automated, and so they want to be able to go home and turn off their phone. And one of the biggest problems with it is that there like a discontinuation in the market means the first person to get an order through when the market opens, using these high frequency rails, will basically extract a lot of MEV, right? The first person to get an order through makes a lot of money, and everyone else doesn't. If you had a discontinuous market, we could actually use one of the core like ways that we're combining Unichain and Uniswap v4. Unichain is using this block building mechanism that uses TEEs to order transactions in a very fair, provable priority auction. By kind of ordering transactions according to priority, we can start to use them in our trading formats. To basically, for example, like imagine you have a Uniswap pool, right? Most Uniswap pools today have a fixed fee for liquidity providers, and then people are arbitraging their pool against the market all the time. And you have then with Uniswap v4, we added these hooks, and hooks give you the ability to customize fees based on various things. And when we actually created Uniswap v4, we were imagining probably volatility-based fees were the most interesting custom fee hook. Now it's not even close to our favorite one. My favorite one is now, because
they got more interesting.
Yeah, because
right?
they got, and that's one of the part of the point of v4 was to create this design space where we don't have to rebuild the entire thing each time we come up with a better idea. And then, we learned that if we could actually set the fee as a function of priority fee, which, the priority fee in some ways is basically the amount someone's willing to pay to move it up in a block is kind of basically equal to the MEV that transaction generates. And so if liquidity providers, and normally the problem liquidity providers have is that they have to pre-commit to their strategies, and then all the MEV searchers that are trading against them have more up-to-date information. But when you basically make that priority fee available to the smart contract, so you can have a hook that sets the fee as a function of priority fee, the priority fee is kind of determined out of a fair auction between liquidity providers, between all the different MEV searchers to build the block. That can then be sent to the smart contract, which can then factor that into the price. And so in some ways, liquidity providers get the last say in how they want to price their liquidity as a function of the amount of MEV they're creating. And this is like sort of the ideal pattern that we've conceptualized, and kind of an example of how these pieces fit together. But then to bring it back to this TradFi problem of trading hours, which I did not forget, is that I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, well, in some ways, because someone made a hook, like a kind of a jokey hook that was like trading hours hook, which was like, it's a version of a Uniswap pool that turns off when the New York Stock Exchange turns off or when NASDAQ turns off. And I was like, well, the big problem is the MEV, maybe there's some, but then you could actually add a priority fee, tax to the first trade after the trading hours. And then essentially that would rebate to the liquidity provider, to the LPs. And so even in like TradFi, you could do the equivalent of an MEV auction at the beginning of the first trade when trading hours open, and rebate that to the order book. And that would be like a way to like make the market more efficient and have less money go to whoever has like the fastest microwave tower connection, or has co-located their trading infrastructure in the same building. And so those are the types of innovations like. Every day we're like thinking about how to make markets better, and we're playing in like a much wider open sandbox of experimentation, where like TradFi has such constrained rules and such constrained systems, and so much that has been built around it that they don't really have the ability to like innovate in this way, and sort of solve their own problems. And so.
One last question, because we got 1 minute left. There's this notion of a financial super app that is being built. This is already like pretty common, I understand, in China, and now inside of the United States, we are seeing Coinbase, again, Robinhood, financial super apps emerge that they can just do all of your finance all at once. Yeah. Uniswap Wallet, your guys' app, obviously is constrained because you guys are not a bank. You guys can't like do on-ramping, all that kind of stuff. You have to go up to third-party service providers for some of that. But talk to me about the future of the Uniswap wallet.
Yeah, I think that one place these super apps come from is sort of a recognition that finance is becoming a little bit more social, right? Like the internet, made a lot of things more social, and I think that like crypto and decentralized finance is a trend in that direction where like it's money on the internet, and so there's inherently these like bigger communities that exist around things, and I'd say that that's sort of a trend I expect to continue with the Uniswap app. Our core focus right now is just to basically really make it the best place to find and trade assets, but I think that like from there, as we sort of continue to grow in that, I think I definitely see bringing it to wider audiences for more use cases. I think that like much like with our chain, we're building it around this core use case of trading. These same things that we've innovated there can apply and can be brought to other use cases, and so I expect the same across our full product suite.
Cool. Amazing. That's all the time we have. Hayden, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.